Hello, Tar Heel Nation. Welcome back into UNC Hoops Talk podcast. I'm your host, Dan DeWitt. Welcome to the podcast that unites Tar Heel Nation. That is my goal here at the podcast. If I sound a little bit different, it's because I have three little kids with runny noses and clogged up noses and throats and stuff, and I'm starting to get it. They're napping, I hope, so hopefully they stay napping while I podcast here and while I talk with you guys. And I'm glad to be back in. Unfortunately, this podcast does not have as much UNC Hoops talk as we would like or as normal, but a little bit of news and stuff to mention that at least relates to and will affect the Tar Heels. And then we'll jump into the games that happened last week, the games that are going to happen this Saturday, and just talk about that a little bit. But I'm glad that you're here, glad that you're joining in, and hopefully uniting Tar Heel Nation. I know I've talked about the numbers this year and how great they've been and stuff. You guys have been awesome. So if we do have new listeners, I hope that you're connected with me on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, somewhere that, if you have questions, comments, that you'll definitely shoot them. And if you are fairly new, if you've started listening this past season, if you just found us, hit me up on Twitter, Instagram. Both of those are at alltarheeldan. Emails at unchoopstalk@gmail.com, or leave a comment or something here on YouTube letting me know that you found me and that you're listening and watching. And just that we can unite and talk a little bit. I love talking with the people out there listening. Let me know how you found me and all that good stuff. But I wanted to make sure we're connected first. So again, thanks for listening. A little bit of news first. If you're listening to this quick enough, and I get it out quick enough and you're listening right away, tonight is the McDonald's All-American game. We have Nasir Little and Kobe White playing for Tar Heel recruits. From the reports from practice and everything, Nasir Little is looking awesome, looking like the best player there. Kobe White is shooting lights out. Of course, not as much defense played at All-American games for sure tonight. It's hardly even worth watching, or if it's even worth watching tonight. But the practices, they had one yesterday, which would have been Tuesday afternoon, the practice, and I forgot about it and missed it, but that would have been better. Still, the defense isn't great, but from all accounts and reports, both recruits for North Carolina are looking really good in those. So that's, of course, good news, and hopefully it can translate at least a little bit to North Carolina next year. And Nasir Little's already come out and said that he's going to bring a different kind of athleticism that the team this year did not have. So hopefully he knows what he's talking about, and he'll do that for us. Other things not directly related to North Carolina, but that will affect North Carolina: coaching changes within the ACC. We have Xavier's Chris Mack going to Louisville and taking over there, and gets a 7-year deal, which obviously he'll need because you don't know what's coming yet. They don't have any, I don't think, any probation. I don't think they have any more scholarships lost. Don't have any postseason bans left. But that's all from the prostitute scandal. They still have the FBI scandal which technically got Rick Pitino. It was kind of the third strike, or whatever, at least. But that's the one that got Rick Pitino, or at least when it happened, that Rick Pitino got fired. The whole Brian Bowen getting paid $100K from Adidas or whoever, I think it was Adidas. Yeah, it was. And affecting his eligibility and that stuff. They have not had any ruling on that for Louisville, so we'll see if it affects them or how it affects them. I would imagine something has to happen if Rick Pitino, if got in trouble and has those text messages on his phone, knew about it, that kind of stuff. Something's got to happen there. So he does get a 7-year deal, but it may take a little while to get some players back in there for Chris Mack and see how he does. And then also the Pittsburgh vacancy is now full, and that is Jeff Capel from Duke, their associate head coach. And so we'll see how it affects. He is the one that's getting all the credit for recruiting the one and dones to Duke, and hitting the recruiting trail so hard for them. Obviously, it's not turned out the way they like. Only won national championships since he's been there, but he did bring in 19 McDonald's All-Americans and whatever. So we'll see if he can do that at Pitt, if he can get those guys to kind of come there, and we'll also see if there's any drop off in recruiting for Duke. Obviously, they have the number 1 class coming in next year, like top 3 players, top 4 out of the top 10 or something like that going there. all of them play small forward, so we'll see how that works. And obviously, the talent they had this year did not correlate to even a Final Four bid, let alone a national championship. So we'll see how that works. If Coach K can teach them to play defense, we'll see how they mesh chemistry-wise, how they play together. All that stuff is still to be seen. But we'll see how at least this affects the recruiting for them. John Shire and Nate James both promoted now to associate head coach, but it also does leave a vacancy assistant coaching job there. So we'll see. You would imagine it's a former Duke player, but who's out there? I don't really know. A couple of names I heard. I don't know how liable they are, but Gerald Henderson has been rehabbing, had hip surgery, and has been out of the NBA the entire year. But he's been rehabbing and been around Duke. He's called some games on the radio and ACC network and stuff. But he's been around the program. From everything that I know or have heard or anything like that, I would assume since he's rehabbing and stuff, his intentions are to go back to the NBA and still play. And then someone also said Jay Williams, but I don't see that happening, especially since John Shire and Nate James are already promoted to the associate head coach. Jay Williams isn't going to come in and be kind of below John Shire, Nate James with the, I don't know, brand that he has already at ESPN. So I don't think that's liable. I don't know who else is out there as far as Duke players who aren't playing or will be looking to get out of playing or anything like that. So that will be interesting. Again, probably recruiting is the biggest, most interesting thing to be watching in that situation. So we'll keep our eye on that, keep you updated. But that is enough Duke talk for this podcast besides Inside the Games. Excuse me. I'm starting to get it in my throat and my nose. I can feel it. So yeah, let's jump into games though. I'm going to mostly talk about the Elite Eight games. I know the Sweet 16 game was played after I podcasted last week, so we may touch on a few of those Elite Eight games, but mostly Sweet 16 games, but mostly we'll be spending our time on the Elite Eight games and then get into our preview and predictions for the Final Four. So so the top bracket, the South bracket, the one that was completely busted apart, we thought Kentucky had the road to the Final Four out of this bracket. End up losing to K-State. Great game, at least if you didn't want Kentucky to win. But K-State goes out of there. Loyola gets up on Nevada. Nevada comes back and looks like they're going to take it with the Martin twins, formerly of NC State. And then Loyola hit some big-time shots. And, and then Loyola, Kansas State was hardly a game. Loyola, Chicago gets up big on K-State and blows them out, which is crazy because they had pretty much buzzer beater against Miami, tight one against Tennessee, tight one against Florida. I think someone said they won by a total of 4 points in those three games. And then this one, they won by over 20, I believe. Without having a score in front of me, just kind of blew them out. But good story. We get the Cinderella all the way to the Final Four, another 11 seed, joining George Mason, joining VCU, Syracuse last year. I believe 11 is the highest seed or I guess lowest seed, you would say, to reach the Final Four yet, but they do match that. And then down in the West bracket, we had Florida State beating Gonzaga. They just kind of beat them up, and Gonzaga didn't look like they wanted any part of Florida State in that game. And then Michigan, of course, blowing out Texas A&M. And of course, because Texas A&M blew out North Carolina the game before, and obviously it was the entire everything that Texas A&M had because they had nothing against Michigan. And credit to Michigan, they came out shooting threes, which we missed. We were at 6 for 31, I think, in threes against A&M, and Michigan just controlled that game. And they did get them out and running, which I said was another key to us beating Texas A&M. Michigan had them running. They were knocking down everything. I think someone said they had 10 threes in the first half, but that was crazy. So that gave us a Florida State-Michigan Elite Eight game. And again, because it's the upsets. Of course, we want upsets in the tournament, and it's fun to watch and the buzzer beaters and stuff. But when we start getting to especially Elite Eight, even the Sweet 16, but Elite Eight, Final Fours, you want the big name brands. You want to see the players you've been watching all year and see how they're going to do in those pressure situations. And it was just kind of a blah game. Florida State and Michigan. It was like, we know Michigan now, they've been hot and stuff, but Michigan or Florida State just came out of nowhere. Like a lot of people had Missouri beating Florida State in the first round. Definitely had them losing to Xavier in the second round if you had them win the first game. So not quite the jazz, the I don't know, sparkle, whatever you want to say to this game. And yeah, Michigan beat them. I'm trying to remember. It was fairly close. Obviously, there was and I don't know if obviously is the right word, but there was the controversy ending there, and not in any plays called or any shots missed or calls made or anything like that from refs, but from Leonard Hamilton first on the second to last kind of defensive possession, letting like 17 seconds go off the clock and then fouling. I think they fouled like 12 seconds left on the shot clock. Put them on the line, and then they're down 4. And Michigan was making free throws. They got it to Duncan Robinson. He was knocking down free throws and wasn't really allowing Florida State to get back into the game. But they also took a couple of ill-advised threes where they could have got to the rim and made it a one-possession game again. But then 10 seconds left, Michigan gets the rebound, gets it to Duncan Robinson, and Leonard Hamilton just calls off the Wolves. Won't let them foul anymore. Says no fouls, and they're down 4 with 10 seconds left. Most people would foul in that situation. Extend the game. They miss one free throw. If it takes you 3 seconds to foul, you got 7 seconds. He misses one of those free throws. It's a one-possession game. You got a 3 to tie the game and put it in overtime. But Leonard lets it go, and then of course the interview with Dana O'Neill afterwards. If you haven't seen it, pretty awkward. She asked him, why did you choose not to foul? He said, what are you talking about? The game's over. And kind of awkward, kind of weird. Doesn't really give an explanation of why he did that, but it put Michigan into the Final Four. So they will see Loyola on Saturday, and I don't have that pulled up, but I'll quickly try to pull up. So I don't know what time the games are. And then on the other side, though, as I'm doing that, we had Villanova, West Virginia game, good game. West Virginia tries to intimidate Villanova. They just aren't having any of it. And they move on. I don't remember the score either. I believe it was at least double digits. But then Texas Tech took down Purdue as well without Isaac Haas. Purdue put up a little bit of a fight. Texas Tech was a little bit too athletic for them. Villanova, Texas Tech. Again, I think it was a 12, 14-point win for Villanova in this one. The interesting, what everybody's talking about, because obviously I'm not podcasting right after it happened. There's been plenty of talk about these games already, but the talk is Villanova shot 33%, did not shoot the 3-ball well, still was able to win and win by double digits. So obviously they become the favorite. I saw, I think it was on ESPN, and I think it was from Vegas, but they have the best odds to win it. They're actually even, so not really making any money on predicting them to win if you're into that kind of thing. But so Villanova moves on to the Final Four. No surprise there. So we get a 1 seed. So we're down to a 1, a 3, and an 11 with Villanova, Michigan, and Loyola. Down in the Midwest bracket, the most. Let's see. Well, I guess the East with Villanova. They were the 1, 2, 3, 5 advanced into the Sweet 16. The 1 and 3 Elite 8. Down in the Midwest, we had the 1, 2, 5, and then Syracuse was an 11 as well. So trying to make the Final Four with 11 seed 2 years in a row didn't happen. Of course, we know. Even though everybody was cheering for Syracuse in that game to beat Duke, they didn't pull it off. But anyway, first Kansas, Clemson. Not much to say there. Kansas took control and beat them fairly easily. Again, I don't remember the score, but as good as Clemson looked against Auburn, they just didn't look the same against Kansas, I guess is the way to put it. And then Duke and Syracuse, yeah, we don't need to talk about that one too much. Is the 2-3 zone against the 2-3 zone. I wouldn't say Coach K knows how to coach it better than Boeheim now. It's just that he had the athletes, he had the horses to take down 11 seed Syracuse. But it did give us a 1-2 matchup with Duke and Kansas. Probably the best game of the tournament so far. Great game. I missed the first half. I think even a little bit more than the first half of this one. It was close throughout, back and forth. Some guys in foul trouble. Wendell Carter didn't play well. He was in foul trouble a lot. Azubuike fouled out with, I think, like 3 or 5 minutes left in regulation for Kansas. And at that point, I was like, I mean, it's got to be over. They still had Carter in. You got Bagley. You got Bolden off the bench. Delarier. I mean, they got everything inside. There's no reason, absolutely no reason that Duke should not have won that game. That was kind of what I took away once Azubuike fouled out. I mean, how does Duke not win that with Bagley, top 3 pick at worst, down low? Some still saying player of the year for college basketball. You got Wendell Carter, probably a lottery pick. I mean, Bolden was a 5-star guy down. I mean, any of those guys should be able to dominate Kansas inside with what they have left. And doesn't happen. They take some ill-advised threes. Kansas knocks down. Trying to think of who it was for Kansas now, because it wasn't their main guy. It's the transfer from Mississippi State, Newman. There you go, Malik Newman. Ended up with 32 points. He had 13 points in overtime. Just big-time threes, big-time free throws. He did a little bit of everything and literally everything for Kansas to beat them. Grayson Allen gets a game-winning shot in regulation, and I thought it was it. I mean, everybody did. It was down and it rolled out. I don't know how. Of course, it was the basketball god saying Grayson Allen does not deserve the hype that he would get for hitting a shot to send his team to the Final Four after what he's done. It was glorious to see him miss that shot, and then of course for Kansas to go on and beat them. Like I said, no way that Kansas should have won this game. I mean, I said it when Azubuike fouled out. Said it went to overtime. It's like, great, he didn't make the shot, goes to overtime, but everything still favors Duke in this game going into overtime. I mean, they should be able to, and of course, sitting in the 2-3 zone, it gave Malik Newman. Again, I only watched the last probably 13 minutes of the second half and then overtime, but it gave several looks to Malik Newman in the corner, wide open. Other guys open threes. Svi hit a big one in regulation to tie it up, and yeah, it comes down to, like, you'd think for a possession or 2 or 3, they should be able to match up man to man and just not let them get an open look. Like, I mean, foul them going to the rim or something, but don't give them an open 3 and just sit in that 2-3 zone. But they did. Marvin Bagley 9 shots. People saying 9 touches. I don't think it was 9 touches. Again, I didn't see the whole game, but he had 9 shot attempts, which is ridiculous. Again, for the top 3 pick in the NBA draft, he should be able to dominate. You shouldn't have to rely on him getting block or getting offensive rebounds to get the ball to put it back in, dunk it, or whatever. Especially he had Svi. I mean, it's worse than Theo Pinson guarding him at this point. So yeah, it was marvelous to watch. Of course, everybody cheering on Kansas. We always got mad for Roy Williams when he first came over to Carolina for cheering for Kansas after North Carolina was out, and here we were all doing it. So pretty great. Sets up a one matchup against Villanova and Kansas in the Final Four. Like I said, Villanova obviously favored. Michigan will be favored against Loyola. A lot of people starting to jump on that Loyola bandwagon, though, saying, okay, now they got a chance. They can win the championship. Seth Davis saying, Loyola's got a chance. Well, obviously they have a chance. They're still playing. Anybody that's in the Final Four has a chance, whether you are talking about, actually can or what the odds are of them winning. But again, Michigan will be favored. If Michigan can knock down threes, if they can play defense like they've been doing, Michigan's been getting the credit of like, oh, this is the first Beeline team that can actually play defense. If they can do that, if they can live up to that hype, and of course they've been there. Beeline took Trey Burke, and I don't remember who else was on that team besides Spike Albert, but took that team to the championship game. So he's been there. Michigan program has been there. None of these guys have. It was 2013. So I guess he'd have to be a redshirt senior to have been on that team. But yeah, they've been there. They got the experience. They should have the confidence if they don't overlook playing Chicago Loyola in the Final Four. And Loyola, if they don't let the stage get a hold of them, if they don't let all the talk go to their heads and say, we've arrived and all this, if they're not satisfied with this, so many teams get to the Final Four like, oh, we made it. We got to the Final Four. but you're not done yet. If you want a championship, you got to win 2 more games. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they come out and how those teams are looking early in that game. Kansas Villanova, obviously Villanova, a lot of these guys still there from the championship game in 16. And obviously the disappointment from last year when, I believe they were a 1 seed and got upset early. If that drives them to back to the championship game and wanting to win the championship, if they don't see that they're favored and let it go to their heads. Kansas, again, if they're not satisfied, hey, we beat Duke, we made the Final Four. I mean, Bill Self was really excited about winning that game. And obviously you should be. You're going to the Final Four. You just beat a really good Duke team, or at least a really talented Duke team. And he, gets a lot of crap for not going to the Final Four enough with his Kansas teams and his 1 seeds and all this. So if he's not satisfied, they can beat Villanova. It's a good matchup actually, because they both kind of play outside in, a lot of threes. One guy inside. Azubuike, doesn't get the ball a lot. It's more get rebounds and I don't know, garbage points and stuff like that. Villanova will get Spellman, but it's more, they will probably post up Brunson more. So it'll be also interesting too who guards Brunson, because he does like to post up, and then also stepping out on Spielman, who can knock down the 3 as their big guy. I don't know. I'm not going to pick games. You guys have probably seen my bracket, or it's at least available that you can see it, and it's not worth looking at, so don't go look it up. But I'm not going to predict. But who I want to win, I think, is probably Kansas. And then, probably I want Michigan to win so that the championship is interesting. But if I knew, and it's kind of, I did this before too, like Villanova played before Duke did. And it's like, well, I'd rather have Texas Tech win than Villanova. I don't want to cheer for Villanova, but they have a better chance of beating Duke. So I want Villanova to win in case they have to beat Duke. Said the same thing with Kansas Clemson. I'd rather have Clemson win. I don't want to cheer for Kansas, but Kansas has a better chance of beating Duke. So got to cheer for them. So in this one, it's going to be the same thing. Loyola and Michigan will play on TBS at, it says like 9 after 6 Eastern time. So pretty much 10 after 6, if you want to say 6 o'clock, whatever. TBS. There are also team streams on, I think, TNT and True TV. And then following that game, again, it says 8:50. But it's really going to be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, after the end of the first one. So it's going to be later than that. So you can't say who you want to cheer for in that second game, or really the first game, until you know the second game. So yeah, and really I don't know. I'd almost rather. Chicago would be my pick if I could pick any of these teams to win. I'd say I want Loyola Chicago. Give it to the underdog. But I'm okay with Michigan. Don't really have anything against them. Although I don't necessarily like the Big Ten winning it. Kansas, obviously, a blue blood. Probably the team I don't want to win the most is Villanova, because they just won it in 16. People talk about, they've been the most successful team in the last 5 years, 4 years, whatever span you put on it. And I just don't think that. Obviously, we went to the 2 championships in a row. We've had a lot of success, and I'd like Roy to get the credit he deserves. I don't know that he's ever going to, but. So I wouldn't want Villanova to win. Looks like Villanova's favored by 5 there. So I guess I'll be cheering for Kansas in that first game, or that second game. First game, I guess I'll cheer for Michigan just to make it more interesting, because you think Loyola won't win it if they get there. But then again, Butler gave us a good, almost upset Duke, which would have been awesome. But so that's, I don't know, not much to say there as far as conviction or hot takes or anything, but I guess I want a Michigan-Kansas championship game next Monday. That one will be played. Let's see if it gives a time. It doesn't give me a time yet, but I'm guessing it'll start around 7. It'll be 7 Eastern, probably 8 Eastern, right? 7:30, 8 Eastern, somewhere in there. On Monday, probably won't podcast, or more than likely won't podcast in between those games. I'm going to podcast next week. Let's see, the game's Monday. And we actually leave, I'm hopefully going to do it on Tuesday next week is my goal then. And yeah, hopefully I get a podcast in next week is kind of how I'm sitting at. But we are actually going to Disney World next Thursday. We leave, and so I got a podcast before that. But anyway, whether it's next week or the following week when I get back, the next podcast I'm going to focus. I'll talk at least about the Final Four games, the championship game, kind of end off the college basketball season, but then also talk about the end of the North Carolina season, kind of wrap up that. I'm going to hopefully have time to go through and look at the predictions all of you sent in preseason, see kind of who was right on, where we were right, where we were wrong for all of us. But yeah, I'm going to hopefully have that together and go through that next time. As far as guys going pro, I've mentioned that on the last one we talked about North Carolina season actually ending. I don't think anybody's going to be going pro. I guess I would advise Luke and Cam both to, and even Kenny, to put their names in the draft, go to the combine if they get an invite, get the feedback of what pro teams think of them and want from them and stuff like that. But I don't expect anybody to leave. I've seen people talking about them being worried. I don't know. I guess the thing with Cam is they say, well, because he's a year older, starting getting that money a year ahead of time. But I don't see that happening. I've been wrong before, probably be wrong again. But that's my take on it. And that's really all I got. Before I do leave, though, just see if there's any questions, comments. And if you ever want questions, comments on the podcast, you can, again, through Twitter, Instagram, say, hey, on the next podcast, will you answer this question or talk about this? Both those are at AllTarHeelDan. You can email me, unchoopstalk@gmail.com with questions, comments, feedback, or I have been doing these live on YouTube. So you can subscribe and you should get it. Make sure you turn notifications on. You'll get a notification when I go live, and you can comment, and I can do it here on the podcast, or otherwise leave comments on other videos, and I'll get them. And again, just say, hey, next podcast, we talk about this or answer this. But also, I want to put a little plug for YouTube. I'm at 192 subscribers, so I'd love, before we really get into the off season, to break 200 subscribers. So again, if you're not subscribed to YouTube, I'd love for you to do that. Of course, if you're subscribed somewhere else and you listen, you don't have to. If you enjoyed enough, go for it. But as long as you're subscribed and listening somewhere, that's what really matters to me. That we can unite Tar Heel Nation and stuff like that. But a little bit of a plug there for the podcast there. But just make sure you're subscribed wherever you are and keep listening. That's what really counts. But anyway, questions that we got so far this podcast. Carl says, I think Kansas will win it all. They surprised me because early in the season they looked average. They have everything needed to win a chip, a solid point guard, good shooting, and inside play. They do have inside play. That's the question mark, though, is can Azubuike match up with some of those other big guys, Villanova's big guy, and can he stay out of foul trouble? Because obviously he didn't against Duke, and D'Souza is coming on for them, I know, but I don't know that he's going to be what you want to bank on for a championship. The good thing is Villanova is kind of an outside-in team as well, so they do kind of match up with them. We'll just see who plays it better. Michigan as well. Their Wagner, their big guy, steps out. They like to play in transition a little bit more. So there's not like we ran up into just a bad matchup with Texas A&M, and they played well. Took us out of what we want to do, and then it killed us. There's not really a team that's going to do that anymore to Kansas in the Final Four. So in that sense, you are right, Carl. And then Carl says, lastly, have you heard of anyone coming in as our point guard for next year? We are thin there. It's not that we're thin. It's just that we're really inexperienced. Seventh Woods has not shown what we wanted him to, or shown that he could run this team and be the point guard. Obviously, Jalik is suspended from the university and then leaves. Would have been the guy. And then we have Kobe White coming in. Again, all the reports from McDonald's All-American game is that he's looking really good, but can he come in? Obviously, we've seen freshmen struggle. Roy has started freshmen, so it's not like he's never started a freshman point guard, but can he come in and be consistent enough, I guess is the best word. We've seen, even Marcus Page struggled. Ty Lawson struggled a little bit, but we have seen, Ty Lawson, Marcus Page is more out of necessity. We've seen Bobby Frazier start at point guard. We've seen it happen, but can he come in? We saw Joel Berry even struggle as a freshman, but of course that was kind of in and out minutes with Page there as well. So I don't know that we're thin, and then Leaky Black can play point guard as well. Will be interesting to see a 6'8" guy there at point guard for North Carolina, but he can do it. Again, it's a freshman coming in, so it's the inexperience. It's not so much that we're thin, but have not heard. I believe there was one kind of guy talking about reclassifying, and Roy was talking with him or looking at him, whatever. But it sounds like he's not going to reclassify. So other than that, I've heard nothing about anybody coming in at point guard for the Tar Heels. And I think what we got is what we're going to end up as far as point guards. EJ Montgomery is out there yet as a possible recruit for this year yet, but not as a point guard. So that's what I got. Again, guys, subscribe where you are. Keep listening, sharing the podcast. I love it. Love chatting with you guys. And make sure you hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, email, whatever it is. All those links will be down in the description. But that's all I got for you this week. Hopefully it's not too long, and hopefully it's enough to get us through till next week, where I'll see you guys again. But until then, go Heels.